The millionaire's son had never walked, until one day his father caught the maid doing the unthinkable. There are moments in life when we feel like the whole world is within reach, that if we work hard enough, hold on long enough, we might bend fate with our bare hands. That's how the early years of Destiny Williams' life felt. Before we dive in, ask yourself this. What would you do if everything you loved was slipping away and no one believed you? Stay with us, because this story might just reflect something you've lived through. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Let's connect. Destiny grew up in the heart of Brooklyn, where the brownstone bricks seemed stained with the smoke of time and coated in the dust of despair. And yet she carried with her something no one could see. Faith. Faith that if she ran fast enough each morning down those narrow streets, eyes fixed on the iron-gray sky above the weary buildings, one day the clouds would part. She believed. She could graduate from college, get a steady job that would be enough to buy her mom a small apartment, and send her younger brother to college, a place where he could finally breathe without guilt. Every morning, Destiny woke up before the sun. She ran through alleyways, earbuds playing old music, heart chanting the same vow, "I won't give up." She picked up crumpled magazines left behind on the subway, cut out job ads, and kept them like treasures. At night, she took free classes at the corner church. Every bit of knowledge she gathered she laid like bricks in the house she dreamed of building, though the foundation was still a long way off. But fate doesn't like people who plan too much. One winter night, with winds sharp, enough to slice skin, the strongest figure in her life, her father, collapsed right at the doorstep. A sudden stroke. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. From that moment on, Destiny was no longer a girl with a future to paint. She became the only one holding up a family in free fall, a chronically ill mother, a brother in 11th grade, and a mountain of bills that never stopped multiplying. She closed her textbooks, packed away her college dreams, and went to work. Not part-time work, survival work, provider work. She served in fast food joints where customers called her name without looking at her face. She scrubbed floors in apartments that looked like museums, places where a single speck of dust could cost her wages. She waited tables in coffee shops where employees had to say, "Yes, sir," to both customers and houseplants. She had swept basement staircases in old buildings where mold grew like poor memories etched into the walls. All of it just to earn one weekly check. Her hands cracked from dish soap, her thin shoulders slumped from endless night shifts. But she never complained, because every dollar earned, she imagined turning into medicine for her mother, textbooks, for her brother, or at the very least, a night's sleep uninterrupted by the shrill ring of overdue bill alerts. But the further she walked, the more Destiny felt herself drowning. Between responsibility, fear, and poverty that bled like an open wound that never scabbed over, she became the person who blew out the candles on her own birthday cake. Some nights, she sat by the window of their matchbox apartment, staring at the sky, where a few trembling stars clung on, and made wishes, not for riches, just for a sign. Some signal from life that she still had a reason to hold on a little longer. And then, one bitterly cold, late autumn afternoon, just as hope was about to burn out, there was a knock on the door. It was Ruth, the elderly neighbor from the floor below, hair silver like ashes and back bent with years, standing there holding a paper bag of cookies. "Destiny, my dear," she said, voice trembling but eyes bright like oil lamps. "There's a wealthy family up in the Upper West Side looking for a housekeeper and someone to look after their son. Pays decent. But the boy, he's different. His mother died last year. He hasn't spoken, hasn't walked since. No one's been able to reach him. If you need the work, I can put in a word." Destiny looked at her. Her heart trembled. Not from the cold, but from reality coiling around her neck like a snake. She had never imagined becoming a servant to the kind of people who once made her feel so small. But her mom needed medicine. Rent was due. Her brother was still in school. She nodded, unsure if she agreed out of duty or despair. Still, she managed a grateful smile for Ruth, the smile of someone who wasn't ready to quit just yet. On a winter morning, cold and gray like a damp wool blanket draped over yawning streets, Destiny Williams stood in the subway station. Her fingers clutched the faded canvas bag handles, knuckles red from the cold, but her gaze was steady. She looked into the space ahead like if she stared long enough, hard enough, the road forward would reveal itself, clear and right. Her coat was old, fraying at the sleeves, threads unraveling like a silent reminder that both time and hope have limits. But Destiny didn't believe that. She never had. At 22, Destiny didn't have much to hold on to except her faith in work and kindness. Her father had died of a sudden stroke one freezing night the year before, leaving behind a tiny Brooklyn apartment and two people she now had to protect at all costs, a chronically ill mother and a younger brother shouldering the heavy dream of college. She had once been a community college freshman, but those textbooks had long been closed, replaced by hospital bills, utility cutoff notices, and shifts so long they made her legs ache. Destiny had served the wealthy, people who called her name without ever seeing her face, but none were like Matthew Blake. She met him for the first time in a hallway carpeted as thick as velvet, behind a mahogany door taller than any man, where a scratch might as well have been a crime. Matthew didn't smile. He didn't frown either. He just looked at Destiny like she was a speck of dust that had wandered into a gallery. Cold. That's the word. His ash-gray eyes were sharp as blades, and every glance felt like a paper cut. But what stunned Destiny wasn't his gaze. It was the silence of the house behind him, a penthouse so polished that every surface reflected light, yet not a single ounce of warmth. Each vase, each painting, every chandelier arranged with chilling precision. It wasn't a home, it was a mausoleum of perfection. In that apartment lived a boy named Samuel, 4 years old. Blonde hair, pale skin, stormy blue-gray eyes, the last trace of the mother he lost. Samuel didn't speak, didn't walk, didn't cry, didn't laugh. He sat by the window each day, clutching a worn-out stuffed rabbit, eyes locked on the horizon like he was waiting for something no one else could see. When Destiny entered his room the first time, she didn't say a word. She just sat, a respectful distance away, pulled out an old comic from her bag and began to read. Low, steady, warm. No pressure, no expectation, just presence. It was Matthew's mother, Lorraine, who hired Destiny. She was the only light in that house, eyes that had seen too much, a tired smile that never fully faded. She told Destiny, "Matthew's not a bad man. He's just been hurting so long he forgot how to breathe without gripping everything around him." Destiny didn't ask more. She knew pain could become the sharpest weapon when no one teaches you how to lay it down. The days that followed were filled with long, drawn-out silence. Destiny cleaned from early morning, polishing furniture like relics in a museum. She cooked to the exact printed menu. No creativity, no improvisation. Every step calculated, every breath held back. But it wasn't the work that wore her out. It was Matthew's gaze, always present, always judging. The kitchen towels are folded wrong. Don't sing to him, he doesn't need that. Every comment is like a verdict. Still, Destiny stayed. She believed someone had to. Otherwise, Samuel would have no one. Then one day, the sky broke open. Rain poured down in sheets, as if the city itself was washing away dirt and memory. The power went out. The only light came from candles Lorraine lit in the kitchen, and Samuel cried, for the first time. Not because he was scolded. He cried because of the dark. A short sob, then longer, then a cascade of trembling whimpers from somewhere deep in his tiny chest. Destiny pulled him close, without asking, without thinking. He shook, but didn't pull away. Matthew stood frozen nearby. He didn't stop her. He didn't move. He just watched, like even he didn't know what to do with the storm inside himself. That night, Samuel fell asleep in Destiny's arms, small hands still gripping her shirt. Matthew knocked on the maid's room door. No tie, wrinkled shirt, and eyes that looked like they had cried without letting the tears fall. I used to have everything. A wife, a son, a family. But I couldn't save her. Anna died right in my arms, and after that, I just controlled everything so I wouldn't fall apart. And now I've become this, someone even his own child is afraid of. For the first time, Destiny saw him not as a man of power, but as a man. One who had forgotten how to love because he was too afraid to lose again. When he walked away from that doorway, something in Destiny shifted. She was no longer just a maid working for money. She had begun to wager her heart. The next morning, while cleaning the penthouse library, Destiny found a folder tucked behind a shelf. Inside was an old medical report, not Samuel's. It belonged to another child. A girl. Name, Grace Blake. Pause for a second. Has anyone ever told you to stay in your place? Destiny didn't, and neither should you. If you've ever defied expectations, drop a fire icon in the comments and hit subscribe. We stand together. The file was thin, just a few pages with smudged ink and a yellowed corner, but the name, Grace Blake, printed in italics at the top left corner looked like a stain of ink that had never dried in the memory of this apartment. Destiny stood silently at the library window, the file in hand, staring at the hastily written medical notes. History of early childhood depression, negative psychological response to separation, suspected influence of family factors. No photo, no doctor's name, no mention of legal guardians. Only a faded stamp from a private psychological center that had since shut down. Destiny closed the file and tucked it into the innermost pocket of her coat like a nameless secret. For the rest of that morning, every sound in the house seemed to echo from another dimension. Matthew's footsteps in the hallway. Samuel is turning the pages of a book, the ticking of the kitchen clock in the cold room. Destiny began seeing. Everything with different eyes, like every object, every shadow was trying to hide something much larger. She started probing, not with direct questions, she wasn't stupid, but with her eyes. Watching how Lorraine reacted when Samuel called for his mother in a dream. Noticing how quickly Matthew snapped his laptop shut when she entered the reading room. The small things, details nobody cared about. But to Destiny, every crumb was part of a puzzle. One night, long after Samuel had fallen asleep, Destiny was putting away books in the living room when she noticed an old photo album peeking out from behind. The armchair, it didn't match the apartment's usual perfection. This album looked long forgotten. Brown cover, rusty clasp, thick dust. She opened it. The first page showed a little girl with dark brown hair and large brown eyes, grinning in the middle of a lavender field. Below it, a handwritten note read, Grace, first summer in Vermont. The next page showed the girl sitting beside a young woman. Not Anna, Matthew's wife, but someone else. Loosely curled black hair, sorrowful eyes, and a half smile. The caption read, Amelia and G. Destiny's throat tightened. She had heard the name Amelia once, mentioned casually by Lorraine, but no one had explained further. As Destiny closed the album, Matthew walked in. His eyes flashed to the photo album on the table like lightning. His normally composed face tightened like a frozen lake about to crack. "Where did you find that?" he asked, voice low and even, but something in his eyes hovered like a blade. Destiny didn't blink. "Behind the armchair," she replied. "I don't know who the girl is." Matthew was silent for a long time. Then he said, almost under his breath, "No one knows, and no one should." He turned away, but the words lingered like a warning. The next day, light snow was falling. Samuel asked to go out on the balcony, rare ever since his last fever. Destiny bundled him up with a warm coat, scarf, and hat, then stepped outside with him into the gray, dim light. He pointed to the sky and said something softly, as if speaking to someone invisible. Destiny leaned down and asked, "What did you say, Sam?" He turned and smiled faintly. "Grace likes the clouds. She's up there." Destiny's heart skipped a beat. "Who's Grace, honey?" He pointed at the sky again. "She plays with me when Daddy's not home." Destiny knelt in front of him. "How long have you seen Grace?" Samuel tilted his head. "A long time. She says I don't have to be scared. She says there's a door." Destiny held her breath. "What door?" Samuel gave a mysterious smile, then whispered, "The door in Daddy's study." That night, when the whole house had fallen asleep, Destiny took a chance and entered Matthew's study. She tried the drawer of the wooden desk, the one usually kept locked. The key was still in the lock, as if some part of Matthew wanted someone to open it. Inside were stacks of documents, business records, Anna's death certificate. But in one corner, there was a thick brown envelope, handwritten, GB, top secret. Destiny opened. It and her world changed forever. Inside were letters between Matthew and a medical facility called Silver Pines, specializing in children with dangerous behavior. Doctors described Grace as emotionally unstable, with tendencies to harm herself and others, especially following her biological mother's death. One section of the report read, "Grace exhibits mild paranoia, believes someone in the house is watching her, frequently talks to an unnamed shadow figure, once attacked a staff member with a crayon." But the final line was what truly haunted Destiny. "Recommend full isolation. Risk level unmanageable. Father consents." Destiny closed the file, her hands trembling. She returned to her room and sat for hours in the dark. Not out of fear, but grief. A child had been locked away in the dark and no one had saved her, and now her presence was returning through whispers in this cold penthouse. The next morning, Matthew didn't come down for breakfast. Lorraine sighed. "He's in there again. Grace's room." Destiny froze. "Which room?" Lorraine looked at her, exhausted. "The last door at the end of the hallway. It's been locked since the girl died, but sometimes we still hear soft knocking from inside." That afternoon, Destiny stood before the door. White paint, brass handle, rusted lock. She didn't knock, didn't open it. She just stood there, placed her hand on the wooden surface, listened, and from the other side, threading through her blood like a current, came a knock. 3 taps. Soft. Barely there. Late that night, when Destiny returned to her room, an envelope had been slipped under her door. No name. Only one handwritten line. "You have no idea what you're walking into. Back off while you still can." It wasn't raining in New York that day, but the sky was still a dull, silent gray. The red brick buildings in Brooklyn felt more distant than usual, and the streetlights stretched across the slick, cold sidewalk where Destiny stood, her hand gripping the anonymous letter from the night before. She didn't tremble. She was no longer the timid girl who once stepped cautiously across the penthouse threshold. In her hand was a thick folder of copies made from documents found in Matthew's study, silent proof of a childhood locked away and forgotten. Grace had existed, and now Destiny owed her something. The truth. The address from the letter led Destiny to a low-rise building in southern Manhattan, a small law office with a faded brass sign, Attorney Diana Meeks, juvenile rights advocate. The woman who greeted her had the eyes of someone who had seen too much injustice but hadn't stopped fighting. Diana didn't ask many questions. When Destiny laid the documents in front of her, she simply looked at her for a long time, then said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Once you touch the past of someone as powerful as Matthew Blake, there's no turning back. Destiny nodded. Grace didn't have a choice, but I do, and I choose not to stay silent. So they began. Meanwhile, back at the penthouse, the atmosphere grew more tense. Samuel mentioned Grace more and more, like she was part of his daily life. An imaginary friend, or a distant memory repeating with each breath. Matthew started to revert to his old coldness. Silent breakfasts, tortured glances, clipped words. Destiny could feel it. He was bracing, but no longer out of arrogance. This time, it was fear. She suspected he might have discovered someone had gone through the files. Maybe he sensed the world was spiraling out of his control again. One late night, after Samuel had gone to bed, Matthew waited for Destiny in the living room. Most of the lights were off, only the warm glow of the fireplace lighting his face. "What have you found?" he asked directly, no pretense. Destiny didn't flinch. "The truth," she replied. "And truth doesn't disappear just because you hide it." Matthew leaned back in his chair, eyes more tired than she had ever seen. Grace wasn't a monster. She was a child in pain, and no one had enough patience to listen, not even me. A heavy silence settled. Then he whispered, "She didn't jump out the window. I don't know what happened, but there was something wrong with Silver Pines. I hired a lawyer once, but everything vanished. Files gone, contacts gone, and I gave up." It was the first time Destiny saw Matthew collapse, not from grief, but from guilt. "You weren't allowed to give up," Destiny said, "because when you gave up, Grace was buried a second time." That sentence became the spark for everything that followed. With Diana's help, Destiny and a legal team began investigating Silver Pines. They tracked down financial records, buried lawsuits, old witnesses, and found a nurse who used to work there, Tess Mendez. Tess revealed things no one had made public, that Grace had been locked in isolation, with no contact beyond scheduled therapy, that some nights she cried until she fainted, but doctors ordered no intervention. One day, she was told she'd get to see her father. The next morning, the window in her room was found wide open. No one confirmed she jumped. No cameras, no witnesses, and all records from that day disappeared during a security audit. The findings were submitted to the police and Child Protective Services. An investigation was reopened nearly 10 years later. Diana asked Destiny to stay out of the spotlight, but news soon reached Matthew. He confronted Destiny on a stormy night, wind pounding against the glass like it was trying to awaken every sleeping soul in the house. "Why?" he asked. "Why bring back everything I tried to bury?" Destiny stood tall. "Because you're not the one who hurt the most in this story. Grace is." Matthew went silent. Then he quietly walked to Grace's room, the door that had been locked for nearly a decade, and opened it in front of Destiny. The room was covered in dust. Porcelain. Dolls still sat in the glass cabinet. The bed was made with a pale purple blanket, and the faint scent of lavender lingered. On the desk, a faded crayon drawing showed a small house, purple flowers, and a giant, smiling sun. "I don't deserve forgiveness," Matthew said, nearly in tears. "I was the father who chose reputation over his own child." Destiny stepped closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. "But now, you have a chance to make it right, to protect Samuel and Grace in the way they both deserve." Investigation lasted more than 3 months. Silver Pines was officially sued in court, with substantial evidence of protocol violations and deliberate destruction of patient records. Former families began speaking out. Children, once locked inside that facility, were contacted. Some now, grown, still carrying wounds too deep to voice. On the day of the trial, Destiny accompanied Matthew. He sat behind Diana, his face lined, his eyes no longer hiding. When called to testify, he told everything, from the day Amelia died, to sending Grace away, to his fear, helplessness, and finally, the unexplained death of the daughter he could never save. The court ruled Silver Pines liable in civil court, awarding compensation to the Blake family and others. The case made headlines, a slap in the face to a private mental health system once protected by money and power. After the trial, Matthew didn't return to the penthouse right away. He brought Destiny and Samuel to the old house in Vermont, where the first photo of Grace had been taken. In the middle of the lavender field, he placed a white wooden bench with the engraving, "Grace, the child never forgotten." The following month, on a sunny afternoon, Destiny received a letter from the court. She had been designated as Samuel's legal guardian should anything happen to Matthew or if he had to travel for work. Not just out of trust, but as a quiet declaration that in this family she was no longer an outsider. After the trial, Matthew began therapy. He no longer avoided the past, no longer tried to control everything. He learned to stay quiet when Samuel was sad, learned to laugh even when dinner was messy, learned to sit next to Destiny without needing to instruct or command. And one drizzly afternoon, while Destiny was wiping the kitchen floor, Samuel ran up, grabbed her hand, and called out, "Mom!" Clear as day, he hugged her tightly. No one had taught him to say that. No one had forced him, but perhaps some small spirit, standing behind the light, had whispered it into his heart. A few months later, the once cold penthouse, once as silent as a museum, rang with voices every morning. No more cautious footsteps afraid of scratching the floor, but laughter, clumsy chair scraping, and even the splash of spilled milk on Matthew's white shirt. For the first time, he laughed at the mess. Samuel was now attending preschool nearby. The boy, who once never spoke, now loved telling stories. One day, he came home excited, holding a drawing of 3 people under a blue sky, hand in hand. In the middle was Destiny, with Samuel and Matthew on either side. At the top, scribbled in red crayon, were the words, "My family." The penthouse had changed, too. Matthew renovated Grace's room, not to erase her memory, but to preserve it exactly as it was, then turn it into a reading nook for Destiny and Samuel. The bed was replaced with a soft lavender sofa. Grace's worn stuffed rabbit sat on a shelf, surrounded by candles and one of Samuel's framed drawings. One old world had opened itself to hold a new one. Then, on a golden autumn afternoon, Matthew invited Destiny to Vermont, to the old house in the lavender fields. The wooden house was cream-colored, with a silver-tiled roof, wildflowers spilling across the front steps. In the yard stood the white bench engraved with Grace's name. Destiny sat on it, a breeze gently stirring her hair. Matthew stood beside her, silent. "The day Grace was born," he said, his voice like a dream remembered. "I thought my life was complete. But when Amelia died, I free fell. I was afraid to love, afraid to lose more. Until you came along, not as an angel, but as someone real who chose to stay." Destiny looked up, her eyes calm, not questioning. Matthew pulled a small item from his vest pocket, not a ring box, but an old leather journal belonging to Grace. He opened the final page, written in a child's shaky hand. "I wish someone could fix our family." Beneath it, in Matthew's pen, "Daddy is trying." Then he turned to Destiny. "Today, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to move forward together, without erasing what came before. Just to live kindly with what remains." Destiny didn't say yes. She simply squeezed his hand, firmly, like the first time she held Samuel's hand, the night he feared the dark. No dramatics, no declarations, just acceptance, human and whole. One spring morning, on the porch of the Vermont house, Destiny made coffee, wearing a light sweater painted with a smiling sun drawn by Samuel. He was playing on the swing outside. Matthew sat reading, glancing up now and then with a quiet smile. The breeze swept through the lavender field about to bloom. Destiny looked out, her hand resting lightly on her belly, as if sensing something. No words. But Matthew's glance met hers with understanding. They looked at each other, saying nothing. Samuel ran up and hugged them both. "Take a picture, Mom," he chirped. Destiny laughed and knelt beside him. Matthew reached for his phone, then paused and handed it to a nearby neighbor. They stood together, under the red maple tree, the wooden house and violet field behind. Them. That photo would later hang in the center of their living room, where Grace's portrait once hung. In the frame, Destiny had written by hand, "There are wounds that never heal, but through love they stop bleeding." We hope this story gave you chills, made you think, or maybe even made you cry. If it did, hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments, what's your story?